He is the prophetic poet of his generation. Today we have a visit with sensational spoken word artist Shane Koyczan. When he steps on the stage at an international TED conference or in a smaller place, his words stir the soul, wake people up and inspire. Stay with us to meet the award-winning Canadian, the boy who fought through the pain of being bullied, who continues to fight for the bullied and spread optimistic ideas for humanity laced with his trademark humor and insight. He is our own spoken word powerhouse who writes books, makes films, has his own band called Short Story Long. He could be someone Katie Lang fondly calls a true Canadian quirkmeister. Stay with us for a visit with Shane Koyczan. It's good to be here with you today and with the literary Shane Koyczan. He was born in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, and raised in Penticton. He is a powerful poet performer who uses words to wow and disturb. His fertile imagination is being unleashed on the page, on the stage, and most recently at an international TED conference, where his well-crafted From the Heart TED Talk left attendees in or near tears, I hear tell. Question is, how do you bring wealthy venture capitalists to tears, Shane?
With honesty, I guess. Just a real story about a real people. I think everybody still has that, everybody still has their heart, or they still, it's strange to me that we live in a world where so many people are guarded against being emotional. And, a lot of times when they come to my shows, that's exactly what I want out of them. I want them to release that part and remember that there's a humanness to them, and you need to embrace that.
And as you know, any great performer, singer, is able to truly be themselves. You're performing, but you really are you underneath all of that. It's part of the magic. It's the Joni Mitchell magic.
Wow, yeah. I think you definitely need to maintain that core of who you are, because I think people, they're smart enough they can tell, so when somebody's just going through the motions with them.
Well, we can spot a phony.
Yeah. So for me, it was always just as I got further into the spoken word world, it just became more apparent to me that the stories that people are really able to connect with are ones from my own personal life, or things that I've gone through that they can then relate to. Even though their story might be different, they've gone through something like that. And the more I started to notice that, the deeper I sort of delved into that.
When did you decide to come out of the closet, so to speak, on being bullied?
It wasn't a conscious thing. I wrote Stick Boy as an exercise. It wasn't, I wasn't planning on, releasing it to anyone. It was a very personal story, and it was a very dark thing. I'm very fortunate that I have a grandmother who never throws anything away. And she came to me one day with a stack of books, and she said, "Oh, here, you wrote in these as a kid." And I just put them off to the side thinking, there's nothing of value there. My childhood was so horrible, how could I ever want to revisit any of that? And then one day, out of sheer boredom, I cracked one of them open and started to read, and I saw that, in the midst of all that darkness and awfulness, there was still a kid there with a sense of humor, and so I started to think about, okay, and I started to explore my childhood again and go down those paths, which was a really difficult journey because I'd blocked it out for so long. It's like, I'd managed to put the cork back in the, stuff the genie back in the bottle and cork it in, and I didn't ever want to let it out because I thought that was just an awful chapter of my life. It's done now. I've moved on, without realizing that, my life is made up of many layers, and it's like a geode that when you crack it open, then you start to see the layers. Otherwise, you're just looking at a rock. So.
And when you were first bullied, did you know what it was?
Nobody talked about it.
Nobody talked about it.
I grew up in an age where nobody, bullying, Ivan Coyote, one of my favorite writers.
Mine too.
Yeah, said, bullying is too cute a word, and it really is for a lot of what happens, We need to start talking about how we're crossing the line from bullying, which it does sound cute, to, what it actually is, and a lot of the times it's assault. So I grew up in an age where nobody talked about it. There were no posters on the wall. There were no celebrities coming out and saying, bullying is a bad thing or whatnot.
No, sticks and stones will break your bones. But
That's
words
the advice
will never hurt you,
That's
right?
the advice we got. about, you know, and that, you know, it was a very sing-song. It's like, oh, you know, it was like, why are you giving us nursery rhymes? Like, this is a real problem. I'm really being affected by this. And today, like, it's amazing to see the amount of people that have come forward and starting to talk about the issue, especially now that it's gotten so bad with cyberbullying and the way all of that is happening. There's no safe place for kids anymore. It's coming right into the home.
And often your grandmother lives far away. You grew up in the north part-time, and your mother had left, correct?
Yes.
So mom disappeared, grandma is there, grandpa's there. And she was, I think you said in Stick Boy, she'd hold my hand, and it was like her Morse code. Everything's going to be okay. How much did you tell her?
Everything. She was the one, you know, and she was an amazing, well, she is an amazing woman. She ran away from home at a very early age. She lived in Gladstone, Manitoba, and then she went to Winnipeg and started working there. And then moved to Yellowknife and started working at a receiving home for unwanted children, runaways, throwaways, abused children. So she'd go to work, and all day she'd work with these children who just, like, you know, they've been beaten, they've been molested, you know, and then she'd have to come home and deal with a kid who just came home from school who is going through something else. And so she'd just make sure she took the time to be there and listen and, you know, really, and that was amazing. It was enough to give me that sort of motivation. Okay, one more round, one more time around we go.
Did she offer you advice, give you one sentence you used when you were terrified, when somebody was beating you up, kicking you, calling you names?
Well, at the beginning of the book, Stick Boy, there's a quote by her. It says, "Survival isn't an instinct, it's an act of sheer will." And I think that's very true. Like, I mean, for me, especially going through school, it was, I would have to will myself to go to school. You know, I walked to school. I could have walked away, you know. But it was, you know, every step got progressively harder, but you'd have to, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this again. And it was very difficult. But she never really tried to stuff me with platitudes or anything. A lot of it was just being there and listening and, you know, maybe crying with me or a hand around the shoulder. It was just, she was just there to let me know that I wasn't alone. And that was really powerful.
Very much so. And here's a little kid that doesn't go out at recess because you fear you might get beat
outside
up.
Was awful.
Outside's awful.
Well, I mean, you know, I was not an athletic kid, so running away was not a big option for me. And, you know, inside, there'd be the few students who would stay inside at school, and you'd know exactly what those kids' deal was at school because they didn't want to go outside either. So in that way, it was kind of interesting to see that I wasn't alone on that front as well. But we were still, all those kids who stayed inside were still very disconnected and unsocial even with each other because we were being corralled away from being social beings. We were, you know, what you have to say or what you think is not worth anything. It's not, there's no value there. So we started to cordon ourselves off from the world, not just other people.
And embarrassed to tell others about yourself, really.
Oh, absolutely.
Embarrassed to tell the teacher. I know you spent some time in the principal's office with some fairly weird principals, I must say.
It's well, like, I mean, the education system in general is not. It's not a very friendly place, or it wasn't a very friendly place for me growing up. And I think education as a whole needs to be retooled because, you know, we teach kids, you know, the basics, the mathematics, but we don't teach them how to be social or how to be compassionate, or we don't talk about those qualities anymore. And I went to a Catholic school that, you know, they preached about those things, but they didn't teach them.
Well, the story in Stick Boy about somebody writes fat ass on your locker. So you come to school, there it is, the janitor's trying to rub it off, and you get called to the principal's office.
Yeah. It was just one of those things where, like, I mean, I think at a certain time there was a mentality that, you know, well, it must be you doing something wrong. And also they didn't know who did it, so it was like, well, it's your fault, obviously. You did something to provoke someone. I didn't do anything.
Well,
if being here was me doing something, then yeah, okay, I guess I'm guilty.
well, he also wanted you to rat whoever it was out, because I suspect you knew who it was, or you suspected you knew who it was.
Oh, absolutely, but that's going to make my life even worse, of course. It's like, why go through that? Like, if you get somebody else in trouble, especially the person you know who it is, you know they're going to come for you. Me ratting on them would just, it would compound things. It would just make them worse.
So you get a detention because somebody wrote a horrible word on your locker.
Yeah.
Go figure. At the TED conference, you performed To This Day.
Yes.
We have an excerpt, and it has to do with pork chops.
Yeah, one of the nickname, well, the first nickname I got called in school growing up was Pork Chop, and there's an entire story behind that as well, but I guess you'll see it in the clip.
Okay, let's take a look.
When I was a kid, I used to think that pork chops and karate chops were the same thing. I thought they were both pork chops. And because my grandmother thought it was cute and because they were my favorite, she let me keep doing it. Not really a big deal. One day, before I realized fat kids are not designed to climb trees, I fell out of a tree and bruised the right side of my body. I didn't want to tell my grandmother about it because I was scared I'd get in trouble for playing somewhere I shouldn't have been. A few days later, the gym teacher noticed the bruise and I got sent to the principal's office. From there, I was sent to another small room with a really nice lady who asked me all kinds of questions about my life at home. I saw no reason to lie. As far as I was concerned, life was pretty good. I told her whenever I'm sad, my grandmother gives me karate chops. This led to a full-scale investigation, and I was removed from the house for 3 days, until they finally decided to ask how I got the bruises. News of this silly little story quickly spread through the school, and I earned my first nickname, Pork Chop. To this day, I hate pork chops.
No wonder.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal time. One of the things that I left out of that explanation of what happened was the part about the gym teacher noticing the bruises. I had a gym teacher who constantly made me take off my shirt for gym, which I was very self-conscious because every kid in school would just point and laugh. You're the chubby kid in school, so and I don't know what his mentality was, where he thought this is going to toughen you up, or this is going to, I don't know what he thought that was going to accomplish, but he kept zeroing in on me to be the one to do that. And so, take off my shirt one day to play basketball, skins versus shirts, that was the thing. I'd always be on the skins team. And, there's a huge bruise there, and well, what is this,
right.
So, yeah, it was pretty tough times growing up, for sure.
Well, and you went from being bullied to becoming a bit of a bully yourself.
Yeah.
When we come back, we'll talk about the rifle incident. When your grandpa buys the .22 and how you felt about the gun. Because it leads us into, I think, you going from the bullied to the bully for a while.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll return with spoken word artist Shane Koyczan, who says yes more often than he says no today. His bullying poem called To This Day will have a deep and long-term impact on you. The animated film is on YouTube, and TED Conference is coming here. We'll talk about that too.
All right.
What TED is.